Hello and welcome everybody. Welcome to everybody who's here in our auditorium and to those that are joining us via the online link, via the Zoom link. Welcome to the Norfolk Makers Festival, welcome to the forum, and welcome to From Craft to Career. This is an event we hold here every year. So this is going to be the form of an informal conversation. This is not question time. There are no difficult questions. And also what I want to do is for you, the audience, to be able to either raise your hand and ask a question, or for people who are watching online on Zoom, type your question and I'll see it on my screen, so that you get out, you the audience get out of this what you need to get out of this. You've come here for a reason, not just purely for entertainment, so that's what we're here to do. Just a little bit of a background information. First of all, those of you who don't know, the forum is run by the Forum Trust. The Forum Trust is a completely independent, self-financing educational charity. So what we do is we provide events and put on events that are focused on lifelong learning and opportunity for all. So we organise the Norfolk Makers Festival, which, as you know, is all about creativity and giving people the opportunity to try something new and explore creativity. We also organise the Norwich Science Festival, the Heritage Open Days in this county, and other events that we either participate in as a partner or organise ourselves. So that's how this works, and that's how we're able to provide these free events, because we're a charitable trust. And if you're wondering where our money comes from, get yourself a car park. That really does bring in some money. And but also we are landlords to our tenants in here, like the BBC and Pizza Express as well. So that's your background to what the forum is all about and what the Makers Festival is all about, and why it's not a market, it's not a place where people come to sell, it's where people come to talk and to teach and to share. So we always hold this event because we know there are plenty of creatives out there who'd like to know, well, how do I actually make a living from what I love doing? How do I turn my craft into my career? And actually, it was the idea of the Business and Intellectual Property Centre who came to us with this idea. So I'd like to introduce now Julie, who can tell you a little bit about that and the services that it offers here at the Millennium Library. That's Julie.
Hello everybody, great to see some familiar faces and new faces as well. And as Jayne was saying, we link in with the Makers Festival to highlight the business aspect of the small business aspect of growing a business, starting a business, and where better to do that than small industry and the creative sector. We do have an awful lot of creatives within Norfolk. Exactly like Jayne, being the BIPC, which is the Business and Intellectual Property Centre, that being the Business Library in shorthand. So the BIPC and the Business Library, we have the British Library at the epicentre of what we do. About 8 years ago or so, they realised that they were able to offer free advice and support to business startup, growing business and entrepreneurs. They did it so well, and customers found that coming to a library for business advice and support had less barriers maybe than some other organisations. So what they started across the country, we very much follow. So we're part of a network of public libraries and organisations offering free business support to startups, entrepreneurs and growing business. Jayne set the scene for everything that we're going to be talking about in a formal discussion. But one element of business is protecting your idea, your creativity, whether that's copyright, trademark, design, and so forth. And within the sessions that we've had annually as part of Craft to Career, we've touched on the importance of protection, but we are lucky enough tonight to have Melanie Harvey from Burkett's with us. Melanie is a chartered trademark attorney specialising in trademark and design protection and enforcement. So it's great that Melanie's with us. Going back to the BIPC, the IP within BIPC stands for intellectual property, and in essence, being a BIPC. Our unique selling point is offering entry-level information on intellectual property, but we go up to, but not including, legal advice. So that's where we need the Melanies of this world. So that just sets the scene of who we are and what we provide within Norfolk Libraries. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much, Julie. Actually, I should have done that about 5 minutes ago. And so what I'm going to do now is hand the microphone to, first of all, to H. Because I'm going to work through our panel, first of all, and give our panel the opportunity to introduce themselves and explain what their business is, their practice, and how they have what they're doing to turn their craft into career. And then we'll have a discussion as we go along about all the different challenges they face, how they overcome them, and so forth. So first of all, I'd like to welcome H. Lee from Stella Box Designs, who has really has provided a huge amount of content and input into the Norfolk Makers Festival. The free events that she's been providing for young and old as they come to the festival is marvellous, as well as the workshop. So I really want to say a public thank you to H. Lee for the effort she's been putting into the Makers Festival over the last couple of years or so. But anyway, H. Lee, the floor is yours to explain Stella Box to us.
Excellent. Hello. Yeah, the events I did on Saturday, by the way, were amazing. If you want to do a lino cut print, do come along on Friday and Saturday and have a go at making your own print. So I'm H. Lee from Stella Box Designs. I've been a professional printmaker for the last 2 years. Before that, I was a train conductor, which is very different to what I do now. But I started teaching myself printmaking about 6 years ago, and then COVID happened, and I thought I basically had a 5-year plan that I'd save up lots of money and then try and go self-employed in another sort of 3 or 4 years. COVID happened, and I thought life's too short. Basically, what is the world going to look like in a few years? And it was just terrifying that I might not get the chance to follow my dreams and become self-employed. So I planned a wee bit. So I sort of saved up a little nest egg to give me a year, basically. I calculated how much I'd need to live off for a year. That was in my bank, and I handed in my notice, and then I was like, right, I've got a year to make or break, basically, and work flat out. And thankfully, many long days later, the end of that year, I was able to decide to carry on basically with my printmaking. Yeah, so that's me. I'm based in Norwich, and I do lots of workshops. So I do lots of teaching. I sell my work online. Do lots of events around Norfolk and beyond. The biggest thing that I'd say about being self-employed that I didn't realise before I started was that your income basically is made up of lots of things from lots of places, as in it's not like you get a paycheck every month. That's the thing I think that I found so much of a shock. It's that it's kind of boom or bust sometimes. You pay out to do lots of events, and then you're broke for a while, and then you do lots of events and you're like, oh, I've got some money again, it's fantastic, and you buy more stock, and just that kind of cycle takes a bit of getting used to, mentally going up and down and trying to plan enough. I feel like I've waffled for ages. Sorry,
no, that's not waffle. That was rock solid content. Thank you very much. And so if you'd like to pass the microphone down to Jasmine, it would have been better if I sat everybody in the right order, but hey-ho. So Jasmine from the Wayward Adventurers Guild, again, a great supporter of the Norfolk Makers Festival, again, bringing lots of free content and inspiring young and old. So Jasmine, tell us about the Wayward Adventurers Guild. I mean, the title itself is fascinating, as are the beautiful graphics that you have. So what is it? What do you do?
Thank you very much. So I help adults and children to create their own fantasy worlds, characters and stories. So basically it's character design, environment design, comic books. Initially we focused on children, but we're now expanding into helping adults. This can include animation as well. Yeah, it started 2 years ago in lockdown as well. I was working for an arts organisation who were trying to reach vulnerable families, and it's very difficult at that time because we couldn't actually see them in person. So I think, like a lot of other people, I thought the postal service was a really good way, so I started making art packs with a very small commission of £1,000. and it kind of spiraled from there. So we still create art packs, but I'm more interested in doing in-person workshops as well and monthly subscriptions. So yeah, that's how it started. And I think previous to that, I had a lot of experience in arts education and arts marketing. So I've been utilising that to make this work, basically. Thank you.
Great, Jasmine. Thank you very much. And so if I can pass the, keep forgetting which of the laptops I'm pointing this at. There we are. So to Laura, thank you very much. So Laura, who I've got to know in the last year or so, is the organiser, one of the organisers of the new East Anglia Yarn Festival. So Laura, tell us all about that. For those of us who are into textiles and yarn, it's quite exciting.
Yes, so I used to work in pharmacy, so nothing to do with anything creative, but I've always been a knitter and a little bit of a crocheter since I was about 5, and done it daily since I was about 16, and found out about hand-dyed yarn when I was in university, so years ago, and I knew it was something that I loved. My house now has a second layer of insulation that is all yarn. So a few years ago, I had a go at yarn dyeing and I fell in love with it, and I became an independent yarn dyer. That is my day job, my full-time job. And I vended at shows around the country. And if you take your handmade business to the right places and the right customers, you will get traction. And I saw these shows, these yarn shows, and they did amazingly well, and they had so many customers, and they all these people who were like, I'm from Lowestoft, and I was there, and someone came up to me in North Yorkshire and went, oh, I'm from Galston. And I was like, we need this where I live. So there's nothing in East Anglia in terms of the shows that I was visiting around the country. And so last year we set one up at the Holiday Inn at Norwich Airport, and there were so many people. There was a fight in the car park, an actual fight. It was amazing. So we knew it couldn't happen again there. So it's me, I'm the organiser, and then I have a couple of friends who I run everything by so that I don't make some sort of awful public mistake. But we've hired the Norfolk Showground Arena for this year, and it is this weekend, and it's an annual event, and at the Norfolk Showground Arena, and I've just booked it for next year, and you have to pay a big deposit, and it's really horrible. So it's going to be happening next year. It's just an event where it's anybody who likes yarn, knitting, crochet, needle felting, anything pretty much to do with yarn and fibre, it's the place you want to be. We've got 85 vendors from all over the country, from the very top of Scotland, down from Cornwall, everywhere. They are travelling to vend with us. And we've got a social event on the Friday night. We've got classes, and it's snowballed. I just wanted to be able to have a stand at a show that was local. Now I can't have a stand at the show because it's too much work. So that's me.
Thank you, Laura. And if I can also welcome Edward from Madrigal Yarns. Actually, are you at the East Anglia Yarn Festival?
I am at this year's East Anglia Yarn Festival, and I was there last year as well. And I might have had something to do with that fight in the car park. It wasn't. I did have a car park in there. Hi, I'm Edward from Madrigal Yarns. I'm a little bit different. Mine was a slow burn. I was a Waldorf student as a child, and knitting was part of my life from when I was very, very little. I wasn't able to get into it as after school, and I trained and spent a career in landscape architecture, which is very technical. And I always dreamed that one day in the horizon, I would have a yarn shop of my own. And then I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago, I lost my parents and I had to go back to Australia for a while, and sort of the planets sort of did a strange thing, and I decided that the time was right. It was now. But I had been planning it for a long time. I had been working out how to get my knitting persona or my knitting personality right. And so when it did come to the time where as Ashley said, you have to plan it, you have to invest, you have to make sure that you have the backing there, the money behind you to begin. And when that sort of did happen, I was ready to go. And thankfully, I started small. You should start small. Don't take too many risks. Get into it very, very, very easily. Do what you can do, the way you can do it, and the way that you're comfortable with doing it. And it's a really fun journey. So I have a studio in my home in Suffolk. Moved out of London, moved to the country. Have my own dye kitchen there, and I do sell online. I do a little bit online, but I focus mainly on doing the shows, and I travel around the country to do a lot of the shows. And I find targeting those bigger things is more enjoyable for me.
Well, thank you very much. And if you wouldn't mind passing the microphone down to Melanie, who's been waiting patiently to have the talking stick. So Julie did introduce Melanie and explained your area of expertise. So if I can just leap in really with a question, first of all. You must have spoken to and dealt with a lot of people who have done exactly what our panel has done and made a decision about their life and the direction of their life and what they want to do and following a dream. So what would you say are, I don't want to be negative, but what are the one or two key mistakes that you think people make that you would like the audience to know about?
Oh, that's quite a toughie, but it is totally relevant. I mean, the thing is, IP hits everybody. There is going to be some form of intellectual property that's relevant to your area. And I think the thing to do really as soon as possible is fully understand what's automatic, what you don't have to get formal registration for, and what you do have to put formal registration in place for, because all of you will have a brand, you'll have an identifier that catalogues who you are in the market. So the core thing there is a trademark. By using something, you gain goodwill and reputation, but it's unregistered trademark. So you're getting benefits right from the get-go. But if you want to avoid stroppy letters of other people that have also set up with very similar sounding names, then make it easier by having a look to see what's out there. I can't recommend the BIPC often enough because I actually give them the legal support one-to-ones on the IP side of things. So there are appointments that you can book and you're likely to come to me and I can explore all of these avenues with you. There's no cost expectation, but it can put a framework in place and let you know where the priorities are, because that's the key thing. Be aware of what you've got right from the get-go and then put a timeline in place, get some traction, get some business, get some money. Don't feel that you have to do everything at the get-go. There are always going to be businesses that do that, but they're minor. They're not the majority of businesses out there. And I think it's just be aware of what you have and what rights you automatically have. Don't fail at the first hurdle, get an aggressive letter and think that's all over, because sometimes it is a bluff. Because the person sending you that letter doesn't realise they're actually perpetuating a bluff because they've misunderstood their rights. So nothing is as doom and gloom as you might think, but have a chat with somebody, and there is a resource locally that you can sort of get in touch with me. So you're not worrying about cost from the get-go. I mean, there are enough support areas around that can help you. But yeah, so I've sort of come into it sideways. I was an engineer by trade, so did that for absolutely years. Got involved with projects where I was working with creatives locally, toy manufacturing companies, and we reworked. I did a robotics bit for a local toy company because they reworked all the physics experiments. Do you remember those horrible ticker tape things that you had to do at school? Well, we did it with robots and cameras, and it was much more fun. And it was at the time that Lego Mindstorms came out, so instantly loads of people were interested in that. And then everyone said, oh, Melanie, you should get in touch and do IP. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And as per my normal reaction, I did, and I really, really liked it. And now I've been doing IP for over 20 years. There's not a lot I haven't encountered, and if I haven't encountered, I can find the answer really quickly. But for Burkitt's, I'm usually the go-to person. Anyone who's got a general inquiry. Most legal firms will give you an exploratory session, again, no cost. So don't fret don't be put off by seeking advice, thinking, well, legal bills are all expensive. There are ways and means of getting around that to make sure you know what you can and can't do from the earliest stage. But I am a creative as well. My happy go-to place is silversmithing. So when I want to zone out and sort of leave legal issues behind, then that's what I do. But I haven't taken the step you guys have taken yet, because I haven't made it anything more than a hobby. So complete respect all round, because you've gone further than I have. So I will be with you at some point in the future. I'm just not there yet.
Well, I'm going to chuck out a couple of questions about sort of key areas. So whoever wants to grab or gesture for the microphone, please do. That's really great and sound advice, and also now people know in this audience, certainly if they're in Norfolk or and further afield, that it's not the only BIPC, where to go for some help, advice around the areas you've talked about. Let's go back to the difficult and dirty subject of money. So have any of our panel, did you make a formal business plan? Because a lot of this has come from the heart. I've heard stories from all of you and from others that I've spoken to while producing the Makers Festival over the years about an emotion. And we've talked about life-changing decisions, whether it's suffering a loss or a bereavement, whether it was the lockdown making us all think again. I can understand all the passion there, but you've got to have money of some kind. You've got to have a business plan. So members of our panel, I mean, whoever wants to go first, but talk to me about how you organised a business plan, and if you did, and what resources are out there to help you with that.
Absolutely. You can't do it. You cannot do anything in business without a business plan, in my opinion. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be complicated. I set out 5-year strategy. I said exactly how much money I was going to invest in it myself each year and what I expected to get back. It doesn't necessarily happen that way, but you have to. A business plan is always a working document anyway, and you review it all the time. But yeah, to do it without that, I think is very dangerous.
So if you're someone who's never done a business plan because you've been doing something else all your life, where does one go to? We've got a couple of people down. Couple of hands raised down there.
Yeah, I just wanted to build on that a little bit. I myself wrote a business plan and I didn't really know where to begin. To be honest, it was a lot of Googling and I found a couple of resources, but it wasn't very helpful. So actually showing people was the best way forward for me. So I wrote what I thought was a business plan, and then I sent it to various people who had strengths in different areas. So I knew someone with a financial background, someone with a creative background, but also someone who had like the business savvy that I was missing. But I had a slightly different approach to starting my business, and I went for a lot of funding. So a lot of funding through Arts Council England. And the way that they like their applications written is slightly different, but the business plan definitely helped me to focus where I wanted to put that funding and what I needed it for. So I went for a project grant and a developing your creative practice funding, and both of those definitely pulled on my business plan, but they kind of required me to fulfill their outcomes as well as my own outcomes. So like you say, it's definitely a working document and something that you need, but sometimes you have to kind of adapt that depending on where your money's coming from, basically.
Funding bids, that's a skill in itself, knowing how to fill out a funding bid, and then also understanding the different funders that are out there and what they want. I mean, that, having done a couple of myself for projects here at the Forum, I know that can be a challenge. Have other members of the panel had experience of that so far?
I've just got a further thing to add, because I think some of the banks, the business managers, will actually sit down and have a session and go through business plans, that sort of thing. But also, I've done a lot of work with the likes of Innovate UK, who've got the grants and everything, who will help you. I mean, I only know them on the IP side of things, but that will get you audits where people will highlight. You don't actually pay for that. And in some instances, I think the IP audit is £2,500 inclusive of VAT, which is a weight off your mind. And the second layer, which one of my clients has just achieved, I wrote both, is £5,000 of funding, which takes them to the next level and actually gets the filings done. It doesn't cover the official fees, so there is something that they contribute, but all of the legal fees are covered. But there's so many different funding bodies, and I think someone like the BIPC, who've got a list of all of those, would be instrumental for that.
What I'm hearing from the panel is very much don't do something in isolation. Consult with those who have useful skills. Is that something that would get nods from everybody? And there are skills out there, and so listen to other people's opinion, other people's experiences as well, which is what this is about. Would you all agree with that?
Can I also add to that? I mean, I think all of us have come from various backgrounds and various professions or whatever, and we have a set of skills already, and it's really important to draw on whatever skills you do have. And you might think they're not relevant to this particular thing, but they often are, and in surprising ways. I even if you're exceptionally good at sort of certain computer programs or Excel, or you're mathematically brained, understand what you're good at and actually see how that can be applied.
Can you just explain IP again?
Oh yeah, for my sins. So IP is the catch-all for anything that's intellectual property. So anything you've created. And so the conventional ones are when it's invention. So you've got patents. There's a monopoly right that lasts for a maximum of 20 years if you put the patent application in place. Then you've got the brand side of things, which is trademarks. How do you identify your business or your offering? There's any number of different types of trademarks. Once you've got a formal registration in place, they tend to be country specific, but there are ways of expanding if your business goes outside of the UK. And they're in force for 10 years, and then you renew every 10 years thereafter. The appearance of something can be covered by a design registration, and that has a maximum monopoly right of 25 years. You buy them in essentially 5-year chunks, and then you just renew if that's something that you're still selling and you want the benefit of that protection. Both trademarks and designs have an unregistered form of protection for a much shorter period with designs. That's a maximum period of 15 years, although the reality is it's a 10-year period because you have to give something called a license of rights in the last 5 years. So it sounds more complicated than it is. Copyright is the one where most creatives grind their teeth slightly. I say that in jest because it covers most things. It's an automatic right. There is no formal registration system in the UK. There are in other countries if, again, you're exporting and you want your protection in those countries. But it's the lifetime of the creator plus 70 years in general. The problem or the grey area comes in if you've done something where you've been employed somewhere else, you may or may not have been employed to do that, then it's the whole question of who actually owns those rights. But if you're setting up your own business and it's you, it's simple. You are the owner of those rights. The time it gets a bit grey is when you've asked a graphics artist or a friend to do a logo for you. And the reality, even if you've paid them because they've been on a commission, they are the first owner of that copyright. And therefore you need a very simple formal document that assigns all those rights back to you. Because the reality is, when you entered into that relationship, that's what you thought you were getting. Unfortunately, the law isn't on the same page with you. So you just need a little bit more to make it easier. And then it's fine.
Laura, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, mine was that I didn't have a business plan. That's the really awkward moment. But mine was because, and I would really feel that this is something that I would stand behind, I took an opportunity when I got a chance. And I don't think you should take every opportunity because there'll be tons that come along and then quite a few that I've looked at and thought, oh, I'm glad I didn't do that. But I would take the ones, when you get a chance, don't be afraid to grab it because you haven't already got a business plan. I'm not saying quit your job. Please don't quit your job and not be able to pay your mortgage. But I was on maternity leave and I thought, I'll have a crack. And then I did, and it went very well. When I did the show, I did a plan. I had a plan for the show. I had a very in-depth plan for the show. But I think those little opportunities, it's a working document. If you get an opportunity and you think, this is me, this is it, grab it, write your business plan. But grab that opportunity and don't let it go.
So coming back to Haley, maybe I'm hearing a combination of emotion, passion, and spotting an opportunity, but also there is strategy and there's planning as well. How do you decide what to do in what order when you start? Do you think, right, well, I'll do stock first, so I know I've got lots and I've got stuff to sell, or do you focus on the spreadsheets and the strategy? In your experience, Haley, how did you approach things?
It's maybe a little different being an artist in that I started. I started making weird art to start with, actually, quite a few years ago, and then I realised that's a bit too niche. No, I'm not going to be successful commercially. So I sort of adapted what I was doing again. So developing, changing as to what sells really. But again, I agree with what you're saying. You've got to start small. And if I want to start making tote bags or greeting cards, or I'm going to buy like 50 at a time maximum to start with, and then if that sells, great. If not, I'll hang on for a while. Basically, it's just not to invest all your money and space as well, because obviously renting a studio is expensive. So I've still got a studio at home. Basically, I stole the master bedroom, so sort of turn that into my home studio, and then I hire places around the city to teach in. So it's just trying not to take big risks, because I still feel like I'm really early into my career and my business as well. I didn't have a plan. Sorry. I feel like we're, again it's just again maybe different being an artist in that it's a long process creating and then making a liner cut print, and then it's more like the long game for me in that I need to build up my sort of profile around the UK basically. But
Sorry, go on.
no, I'll just say you touched on about finding where your audience is, and that I know if I go to a village hall or a community type event, probably won't sell a thing basically. If I go to like a huge print fair in London or elsewhere, that's where I'll do well basically. So I did have a good 2 years of, I'll just do another one. If the fee's not very much, I'll just do another small event. They're like, no, just beating your head against the wall basically. The people that go, it just they don't want to spend £50 on a limited edition liner cut basically. It's the same. Same online, knowing where to sell and spend a lot of time on social media. I know there's a whole new topic opened up maybe
Yes,
there.
well, let's talk about that. Yes.
I spend sometimes 4 or 5 hours a day on social media, creating content for social media. And we were just talking about this before we started, and that if I don't put it on social media, it's not going to get seen. If I show people how I make the item that I make, basically the processes, that engages people, and there's a story behind that. I show my face on there basically as well, and people like to see the person behind things, not just like product all over your social media basically. So you behind the art, I think, is really important, and some people just don't do that. But I think it's really people buy from people basically. And I think it's really important to show yourself and your value and your personality as well.
Identifying with personal stories that other people identify with. Well, let's talk about the big subject of marketing. And yes, online is extremely important. So again, that presumably is something that you have to have a strategy and a plan for. You can't just start putting stuff out there, because you'll build up an expectation. So who would like to talk about that? I mean, how your online plan? Go for it, Laura.
So I have two separate things when it comes to this, because I have my yarn dyeing business, which is where I'm putting my face out there all the time, and then I have the show with my yarn dyeing business, which is like my little corner of the internet. I have a YouTube channel, I have a knitting podcast. I've made friends, but I also have tons of customers that come from there, because we have a chat, but we get to know each other, and they're not just buying my yarn because they want my yarn. They're buying into me as a person and supporting my family and supporting the dog, things like that. I get a lot of requests to see the dog, but yeah, social media and just putting my face on there, putting my products on there as well. and getting them shared, getting a community vibe, getting that going on, because the connections that you can make, not just with customers, not just posting things on social media, but in terms of with your peers. I have so many yarn dyer friends, it's unreal. And that was before I started the show. And we all cheer each other on. And yes, we are each other's competition, but we are also, we're like colleagues. They are the people that keep me sane on a daily basis. And we all share each other's things, and everything gets boosted up. And I put something on. I might get 100 likes on an Instagram post. I'm not huge on Instagram, but I put something on last week that was a collaborative effort that loads of us got into, and all sharing the same hashtag. And it got 500 likes, and then it went live yesterday on my website and got 60 sales within an hour. And I was like, what's happening? The power of social media. So on one side, I have that business where it is put your face on, and people will buy into you. On the other side, I have the show. And that is something where if you're looking at events, if you're looking at bringing people together for the right market, which you need to be selling at the right place, whether it's online as well, you're curating your online audience with your social media. You are finding the right people, using the right hashtags, using the right pictures, tagging the right people. You're finding them and bringing them to your shop, to your site, to your show, to your everything. You're curating your own customer base. With the events, I think personally, yes, there is connections you can make. I met Jayne, and I came and did a whole thing in the forum on Saturday, handed out a ton of leaflets and things like that. But it is also about budget, and you can build that in for things like that. And I have quite a considerable marketing budget compared to my zero marketing budget last year, and I've spent it all in local places, getting the word out. So I think it really depends. There are times to have a marketing budget and things that you pay for. There's so much you can get for free. Take it all.
Ed, what are your thoughts on social media as far as magical yarns are concerned?
I too spend a lot of time on Instagram, but my thoughts are, I follow everybody, and as Laura says, we are a community of creative yarnists, and we sort of say that the as the water rises, we are boats, and we all rise up with it. So we lift each other together. And we it's interesting following other people and seeing what other people do. And I think the most important thing for me is to not try and compare yourself too heavily to other people and what they're doing. You must understand what you're doing, follow what you are doing, and follow your dream and follow your vision for yourself. Don't get distracted by the noise of what other people are doing. Some people, their business is that, my business is that, someone else's business is that. I don't want to copy them, or I don't want to try and emulate what they're doing. Don't be jealous if they're doing better. It's not a race in that sense. We all, as I said, we all sort of lift each other up together. But also, my feeling is, and we were talking about this earlier, is that only put content on there that you really think is good. That you really, throwing 6 Instagram posts a day of filler is not going to make your Instagram story particularly interesting. It's got to be really, really punchy. It's got to be about you. It's got to be about your story. It's got to be engaging, and it's got to be something you will like to look back on, because it's there and it will always be there.
Forever.
Yeah. The other thing also is I have a YouTube channel, and in the YouTube channel you get to you make a little video and you get to be a little bit more conversational, and I think that's also nice. So yeah, that's my...
Well, we've been, let's go down to Jasmine. We've all been talking about Instagram. Is Instagram the main one for you too?
I might put a spanner in the works, actually.
Oh, go for it, yeah.
Yes, I'm also a freelance arts marketer, so I think I might put myself out the job now. But I am not the biggest fan of social media when it comes to my own business. I find it's quite helpful to get out key messaging. But in terms of the noise and the new algorithm of social media, it makes it quite difficult to reach the right people, and the conversion for, if somebody's looking at your stuff, the conversion of that to sales or tickets is a lot harder now. Mostly because, I won't get into too much detail, but mostly because the social media platforms want you to stay on the platform, and so they make it quite difficult to move your audiences elsewhere. So personally, for my business, the people I try to reach are introverted, and they're quite a niche audience of people. They tend to be neurodiverse as well, and so social media can be overwhelming and not the right space for them. So I try to reach them in other ways. So I find word of mouth is much more beneficial for me, and posters, leaflets, flyers, but also we're looking at doing Discord and Twitch and those kind of slightly more niche platforms, just so I can get to the right people, because I myself don't like using social media either. So it's quite difficult as a someone, to putting yourself out there is difficult. And so having to do that every day is quite difficult as well. I do it, and I have to do it for other people because it's my job. But I think it's worth considering where your audiences are and where you're comfortable, because if you're able to speak more authentically, I think you're more successful, and also it will be more sustainable because you'll be able to do it for longer.
Talked about online marketing, but what about online sales? I mean, are there online sales sites now that any of the panel find useful?
Don't go on Etsy. I'm a horrible person for saying that, but I have a website and I sell through my own website, and I've sold on Etsy in the years gone. And no disrespect if you want to start on Etsy, I think it's a great place to begin. If you can't pay out, everyone can't pay out for websites straight away. But I started on Etsy years ago with other things, and there was constantly my thing and advertised on the bottom of the page 10 other things from other people that were exactly the same. I did not have my niche at that point at all, obviously. And the fees were extortionate then, and they're even more extortionate now. But there are tons of sites like that. There's more up and coming sites like that. Just do a little bit of research and find those platforms. And for me, it was having my own website, which was really scary, because I was there thinking, if I pay £29 a month for this website, plus I need some help making it because it's not me. That's a huge outlay. That's something. And I sprung for it, the cheapest of the cheap, and then had my monthly fee, and it worked out. But my website was posted in every single social media thing. Social media works for me, and my website the link was posted everywhere, in everything I posted. Make sure you go to the link. Here's my link tree, go on here. And it literally was in everything, and it worked for me. And the amount of people I've heard complain about selling on Etsy, about being treated like they're in a craft fair, but just online, with people undervaluing, people complaining, people bringing you down. For me, it was right for me to be on my own website because I had the ability to share that. It might not be right for everybody.
Can I just add to that? I did exactly the same as you, and I went on to got my own website, and I did a Squarespace online store. And only then to be confronted with the horror of horror when I went to do my first yarn fair, that the point of sale, the little POS console that you have to take payments wasn't compatible with it. So my advice, if you are going to do your own website, is make sure, if you are going to do physical point of sales, is that you have one that will synchronize your stock. Because I think that at the moment there's only one that does that. I think it's Shopify, or there might be more coming. But
I'm on Shopify, but I don't know how things work. So I just have to pull everything off my website when I go to a show, use my PayPal machine, then go home and do a stock check. So there are platforms that I have a Zettle. Everything's on Zettle. I just don't know how to use Shopify. I've had it for 3 years.
Websites have to be good, don't they? I mean, personally, if I go to a website, I will make a judgment immediately about branding, about colour, about layout, about so on, and I can literally spend about a second or two before I go, I'm not going any further. So is that an investment? Because, as you say, it's not everybody's skill set.
Yes. So my website, where I sell my hand-dyed yarn, is a Shopify template. and I like it and it works. And I look at it and people look at it. No one complains. No one asks me for help. So it must be working. And it was a template and it was very basic and I built it myself. The East Anglia Yarn Festival website, I paid for. And I paid, and I got mates rates because I had a very good friend. But I know that she charges about £1,000 to build a shop-based website with all of the bits and bobs. And then maintenance and all sorts if you would like that continuing on. And the websites she builds, nearly went very wrong, they are a million miles better. But you can do it, and you can do it on a free template, and it will be workable, and I think it will look good. But if you pay, you might get something really amazing.
So there's two platforms I think are very good for website building. The one I use is Squarespace. It's not the cheapest, but a lot of YouTubers are sponsored by them, so you will find a discount code somewhere on YouTube. It's much better since its update as well, so it's very drag and drop, very accessible. And Wix is the same, so if website building isn't something that you're comfortable with and you're more of a visual learner, those Wix and Squarespace are quite good ones to start with.
Have you, any of you on the panel, had a fight, aggression, people coming down hard on you? That's not your idea, that's my idea, or who do you think you are? Or have you had any sort of aggressive action by people, either online or at markets, that you found is an unexpected challenge, or has it all been collaborative?
I'm dealing with one at the moment where there are people in the very same business, and the concern that we're investigating is, well, I became aware of their rebrand in November, and it's clearly taking off our brand identifiers. What are they doing? The reality is that they are completely distinguishable. There's not an issue. There's a very minor bit that overlaps. But when you see the two side by side, the two websites, you'd never, ever think one was connected to the other. So there are spaces you can make use of, because the end result is, if you are confused with someone else or someone thinks that you're linked with someone else, then there's something wrong. Because the whole purpose of whatever you're chosen to call yourself, to set yourself up in the market, is how you're identified. The last thing you want is for them to think, oh, well, that's associated with so-and-so. All of your hard work goes to that other entity. You miss out completely. But there is a real problem because of the copyright in the actual website content, the fact that it's unregistered, and the fact that it's freely available online. And a lot of people think that means they can just lift it. So if you are doing a website, make sure you've got a contract in place that gives you the ability to use the images, take the photographs yourself, then you own them. And that's a really easy fix to avoid a lot of aggressive letters. There's a huge campaign online for companies who just send you aggressive letters saying, I'm actually contacting you on behalf of the photographer. You had no permission to use this. You now have to pay a really steep bill, and they'll put all this legal jargon in. And most of the time it's a horrible bluff and they just want money from you. So be very wary. So produce your own, go through channels, and feel the confidence that what you're using is safe. So.
Go back to what we're here to talk about, which is craft to career. We've talked about the career side of things. We've talked about there's lots of other factors, of course, that are involved in setting yourselves up and taking on as a way of making a living or part of a living. How much do the panel feel that you've lost the passion and the love that you had for that craft in the first place? And do you ever resent the amount of time you have to spend running your business now? Basically, has your dream come true? If we can work our way down the panel, has your dream come true? Jasmine?
Yeah, in some realistic sense it has. I mean, there are days where it's harder. There are days where you cry a lot. And you kind of wish you could have a day off, and sometimes it is very difficult to switch your brain off, because it's just you and the work doesn't stop. You can kind of always find something to do. That it is difficult in that respect, but it just feels right. And I think when you find an idea and you pursue it, you kind of naturally know if it's the right thing to do. And it just keeps me going. So even though it's hard and there are moments where I probably do hate it a little bit, I know the next day I'll be fine, I'll get over it. And I think that it is worth it, definitely worth it. And yeah, so I think, yes, my dreams have come true in a realistic way. But I would say that it's really important to have something other than your business to give you perspective when things are difficult. So it tends to feel massive. So when something goes wrong, it could be a very small thing, like you've used the wrong hashtag or the link doesn't work and you've printed a banner with a QR code and it takes you nowhere. And it feels like the biggest thing in the world. And I think if you have something that puts it into perspective, whatever that is, whether it's kind of gardening or doing something else, that's really important and it will definitely help you.
So, Laura, dreams.
They come true in April and May, and the rest of the time, no, my dreams have come true. But it's really hard and very tiring. So I have small children. So things will get better. I keep being told, and hopefully one day. No, I work until in Advent season, so I make yarn Advent calendars as part of my yarn dyeing thing. There were days when I worked until 4:30 and then I got up with my kids at 7 just so I could get my orders out. Those days, the dream is not alive, the dream is well and truly dead. Other times, the month after the show, where I'm going to do nothing, that's when my dreams are going to come true. No, I just want to knit, and that is kind of why I did this, because I didn't want to work in a pharmacy. I wanted to sit and knit all day. That is not a job, apparently.
Same.
Yeah. So my dreams have come true, definitely, and it is all worth it. But oh my gosh, it's hard and tiring, and some days you're pulling your hair out. But I think with anything worth having, with anything that's really worth it, that's probably how it's going to be.
How would you answer that question, H.
Yeah, very similarly, thankfully, that you'll work harder than you ever thought you could work in your life, basically. But then if your family decides they want to meet up with you and, go to the coast and you don't see them often, then you can take the weekend off without having to, or a few days. That's the biggest thing for me, is that you get some work-life balance back. And I didn't realise when I did shift work for 5 years that my whole life revolved around shift work, basically. That I was thinking, I've got 36 hours to my next shift, so I can't drink, I need to get this much sleep. And you just don't ever switch off and you don't get time to do things you love. And the lino cut for me, I'm obsessed. So I've become a million times more obsessed than I was when I was working full time. So if you find that thing that you are obsessed with, and I think about it all the time, which is very sad, it's just like a piece of floor tile and some little tools, but I think about it constantly and it fulfills me. It's mindful. It's so me personally, mentally, I think it's fantastic, and it's totally worth it if you find that thing that you love to do, basically.
Edward, your turn to talk about dreams.
Thing's not a full-time job. That's news. I kind of wanted it to be. So I didn't want to then be doing it in whatever form and then end up hating it. So I kind of protected my dream by doing something slightly different from it, but still somewhere around it. And then I thought I'd give that a go and see how that works out. And actually, I ended up loving that more. So actually, I echo everything that that the panel has said about the hours. The brain never turns off. You wake up at 6 in the morning, and you're back in the studio, or there's always something to do. But the lovely thing about it is that there's always something to do, and you can pick and choose. You've got a list of about 50 things that you have to do by a certain time. And you can choose. There's no one breathing down your neck saying, I need that on my desk at 5 o'clock. It's always up to you, and depending on, how you're feeling or what's on television, or if you do have to go and see your family. So, I'm always knitting in the car. I'm always knitting on a train. I don't care. I take it everywhere. I wouldn't change it for anything. It's been fantastic.
I do exactly the same. I take my knitting wherever I can. I start the day with knitting and I end the day with knitting. I want to ask the question again to go down the panel. We're going to start here rather than the mic going all the way down and coming back up again. So what does success look like?
I think success for me is just it's being happy, and it's just being comfortable that I know that I am doing what I wanted to do for myself. I was unhappy in my previous job. I was very unhappy. And you kind of don't realise that. And I spent 25 years doing a job that I liked. It was okay. But towards the end of it, I really didn't like it. And you don't realise it until you sort of have to step away from it, or you choose to step away from it. And I guess I was very fortunate that I had the opportunity to do that. But success for me, I mean, it's actually also the validation of knowing that, you know, what I'm making people like. And I think that's fantastic. Obviously, you know, the money is good, but it's, you know, I think money comes when you're happy and when you're successful and when you're putting out a positive energy and you're engaging with your customers.
What would you say success looks like, H.
Similar to you, to be honest. It's the very simple joy of, this is what I love to do. Yay, someone likes it enough to and connects with it enough to buy it, and I can pay my bills each month. So I'm not expecting to be a millionaire anytime soon, but if I can pay my bills and not have to stress about that and still be doing something I love, then that's success for me, basically. And just working towards little goals. I think it's important to have goals for yourself, whether that's sales or followers, or just this year my sort of goal for the year was basically to do a big print fair outside of Norfolk, because Norfolk's very easy to stay in all the time. So next month I'm doing a big print fair in Eastbourne. So that was sort of my goal for the year, is to do a big event, niche, expensive, but fantastic, hopefully, for my career. So just having goals for yourself as well, little ones that you set, as well as financial ones, basically.
How would you answer that, Laura?
Quite the same. Yeah, snap. But also for me, validation, other people not looking at me and going, oh, that's just a hobby. Yeah, it is a hobby, but actually it pays my bills. And yeah, being able to look at someone and go, this is my job. That's success for me. Success for me is being able to drop what I'm doing at any point because my child is poorly, to go on holiday whenever I want, because we don't have to work around someone else telling me when I can and cannot book time off. Success for me is just being able to not feel like I'm worth something because of something I made. And I made this, and it pays my bills, and yeah, it's pride. Success for me is pride in myself and feeling like I made something and it worked.
Jasmine?
For me, it's when I see the artworks that my community create, and how they use the resources, because they use them to create things that I would never think of. So for the Norfolk Makers Festival, I created a map, and it was all these fictitious places, and basically the idea was participants would choose a place and create an adventurer for that location. And it's been amazing. They not only did they sketch things during the workshop, but they've taken them away and made animations, more character designs, and they've really run with it. And the thought that my resources and the time they had with me can then go on to create something new is amazing. So definitely that, but also sneaking in time with, you know, my partner, my family, and my guinea pigs.
And Melanie, I think you've achieved success because you've got the word enforcement in your job title, and I would love that.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to everyone, and I think before I get into that, it's the goals and drivers for everyone is going to be slightly different. So how you measure success is going to be completely unique to yourself. Don't look at someone else and say, well, they're successful, therefore I have to emulate them. There's been an absolute sea change because of the pandemic. Everyone took an immediate step back and said, what is really important to me? And they've done that probably 3 times since 2020, because I'm seeing a complete evolution with people. And I think because you're operating in the creative sphere, this is something you will naturally do all the time, and you do it automatically. And so you will be evolving with where your interests are. But yeah, I get to enforce everyone's rights, which I really like doing, because I don't like bullies. That's the problem. There are a lot of bullies in the creative space. they don't always realise they're being bullies. But you kind of need to know what they can and can't do and where you stand and everything else. So, yeah, that's my giving back side of things. It really is. I particularly like that part of my job.
And I love to hear the panel talking about the satisfaction they get from seeing people create things. This is something that we see through the Makers Festival as well. And I think we know, and many of you in the room and watching online will also agree, that being creative changes lives and it saves lives in the literal sense and in the way that also it evolves lives and saves them and makes them something different. I think I see the importance of all those creative activities to the people that come to the Makers Festival, either as visitors or those contributors who take part. And you can see the community and the vibrancy and the importance it is in people's lives. It's not, none of this is just a hobby. This is really, really important, whatever your art or your craft is. It's the time really where I would ask the audience if you have any questions, because of course in one small evening and one small discussion, we can't possibly cover absolutely anything. People can type me a message if they're watching on Zoom, or is there anyone in the audience here that would like to ask a question, either general or specifically to any panel members? Yes, go ahead.
I got a pattern out of a charity shop for a bag, nondescript bag. I haven't really looked at the details of it. If I wanted to make that in different colourways, maybe change it slightly in how I do it, where do I stand in being able to sell that as a saleable item?
Can I just repeat the question for the online audience, because they won't necessarily have picked you up. So what you're saying is that if you've seen a pattern or you bought a pattern in a charity shop and you want to make that bag, maybe embellish it slightly, where do you stand legally if you then make something from this pattern and then try and sell it? That's the summary of your question. Yes.
Okay, so if you're lucky, it's there's no identifier on it, and therefore, excuse me, the copyright will be considered to be. Oh dear.
I'll get you some water. Oh, you got some.
Will be considered to be an orphan right, and therefore there's no way of finding out who owns it. There's no way of finding out the timeline and everything else. So the first thing you should do is have a look. Are there any sort of small sort of writings? Is there someone who says who the copyright is owned by? Usually it's either the copyright symbol, then some identifier, someone's name, someone's trading name, and then a year. And so the classic copyright statement are those three things. Then you can actually try and find that owner. Could have gone out of business, could be dead, it could be vested with the state. So there's a lot of horrible things. And the problem is you can do a lot of things with someone else's copyright as long as it's for your own personal use. There's lots of disclaimers that you can do it. Unfortunately, you're wanting to do it for a commercial reason because you actually want to sell. So take a step back. If you can find out who owns it, or at least credit them so that their moral rights have been recognised, because you're allowed to start from someone's rights position. You're allowed to add your own input to it as well. So if you're just producing to that pattern, then there is a potential problem that someone might say, well, actually, this is mine, you're not authorised to use it, I'm entitled to some remuneration. That's worst case scenario. But start from that position. You're allowed to start from someone else's point and add to it. Bring yourself into it. Make it unique to you. Create a separate copyright in what you're producing that's yours in your own right. And then you should be okay. It's not an easy path because we all get inspiration from others, from lots of different places, but it's knowing that you can use that as your starting point. Don't just make a straight copy. That has the potential of being awkward at some point in the future. And it always comes at the most awkward time when you're busy doing something else, there are not sufficient funds to deal with it, and there's a lot of people that will just cave because they just haven't got the time or the energy to fight their position at that time. So it might not be as doom and gloom as you think, but make it your own. And that puts you instantly in a distinguishable position, because that's what you need to be. You need to have something that's unique to you and is yours. But don't worry, there's a whole set of conversations about the dichotomy of where you started from and what you achieved and everything else. But you are allowed to start from someone else's work and then build on it.
Yes, the lady in the grey jumper. If I can just summarise the question through the microphone as well. So tell me if this summary is okay, but you're an artist rather than a creator. Is that painting and drawing, or painting and drawing? So where do you stand, to simplify what you said, as far as copyright is concerned? Because you are creating something new, you're not copying other people's work. So where do you stand legally?
Okay, so you yourself, the artist, will have a brand. So that's how you put yourself out there, and you can consider doing trademarking so that you identify yourself. Each individual creation, your art, will be an artistic work. It will be open to copyright protection for the life of the author, the creator, that's yourself, plus a 70-year period. When you sell that piece of work, you sell it on the ability that someone can do a restricted number of things with it. You're not giving them the ability to then change that work. You're not giving them the ability to claim it as their own. You've essentially given them the physical product, but there are restrictions of what they can do. So be fully aware of what copyright allows people to do, where you as the actual physical creator, what your rights are, but equally what they can't do when they buy it, because they're just buying that one representation. They're not buying the ability to then copy it and sell it on. That isn't what they're buying. And that's where I think you'll have issues potentially in the future.
Something that might help you is, you might have heard of it, the artist newsletter. So you can become a member, and it provides some legal guidance and contract templates, and it's specifically for artists. So hopefully that will help in some way.
Are there any particular sites, newsletters, publications that the panel would say are really good sources of and assistance?
Yeah, so I have a background in fine art, so I've got quite a few different resources that I go to. So Artist Newsletter is one. The Association of Illustrators is another one. If you're somebody who does illustration or kind of graphic design, they're particularly good with resources as well, and that kind of legal help. And also newsletters like Visual Arts Southwest, which I know isn't in this area. I'm from Dorset, so I'm still trying to get to grips with what you guys have got. But those kind of hubs have free resources usually as well. So there will be a contemporary art part of the east of England that you can choose. So those are the ones that I tend to go to.
Laura, any
Well,
really, I'm sorry, I think my mic cuts out every now and again. Any particular useful sites or publications?
I have been at one point a member of the Artists Network, which also, if you fit into their categories and do read it, please don't take it from me, but it's very cheap to join for a year, and you get public liability insurance with that. So if you're going and especially selling in person, obviously always make sure you've got public liability insurance, and there's loads of resources on there, loads of things on there. But yeah, the Artists Network is one that I've used.
Actually, any to add to that?
The only one I can think of is, I believe it's called Curator Space, but I can let you know what that's called. And that's basically, I think it's only about £25 a year to join, and you get a profile on there, and it's for exhibitions and galleries and events around the UK for artists. And they have a newsletter that's free, as well as becoming a member as well.
Edward?
But I call it A-N in my head. I didn't know what that is. That the Artist Network? Yeah, if you're just public liability insurance is the best place to get that. I think it's like £35 a year for just PLI, and then if you're teaching workshops as well, like I do, it's an extra like £15, so £48 a year or something similar to that if you're going to be teaching and doing sort of art and craft events as well. So it's definitely worth it.
Nothing to add. I'm also with Artist Network.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jasmine.
I did just think of one. The Norfolk Arts Forum is excellent. It's a free one by Norfolk County Council, and they provide lots of funding opportunities, artist opportunities, and on top of that, they have something called Start East, and they also have a bulletin, and that kind of helps with the business side of funding as well. So they're both really excellent newsletters.
A question that's come. Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. Go ahead.
It's Norfolk Arts Forum.
Thank you, Jasmine. A question that's come in from one of the people watching online. Has the panel got a story about something that went wrong when they started up and in hindsight would have been avoidable, so you can save somebody else that pain?
I've got a few. No, I haven't got a few. Well, I have got a few actually, but I haven't got a few I'll share. I had an issue with thinking that I could run before I could walk. And I was like, someone's bought my yarn. I'll buy another 10 kilos. And they bought 100 gram skein, and I bought 10 kilos because that happened. And then was like, well, now I'm poor. For me, it was bite-sized chunks. I leapt in and went, I'm going to do that. Spent all my money and I had none left. And it was horrible. So I would say really look at the bigger picture. Every decision you make, just have a little look at the bigger picture and think, don't just jump in like I did all the time.
Totally sympathise with that. Not buying yarn is very hard.
Can I also add, and this didn't happen to me, and somebody gave me this sage advice when I first started, and it was to, it's along the same lines, don't overinvest in things that don't really matter. And I know brand awareness is very important, and having a good logo and having good graphics, but you don't need to spend a fortune on it. You just need to have a name that's identifiable. And a friend of mine started a business and she spent $5,000, it was in Australia, $5,000 on a logo, and she never actually started the business. So she had a $5,000 logo because she believed that by doing that it would force her into, getting the business off the ground. I didn't have my current logo until 5 years into the business. I just had a name. So it's just about spending the money wisely.
There are people out there who want to part you with your money when you start up, would you say?
I don't know. I think you have this perception that you're so keen on having your identity and launching yourself, in this very hard way. Launch yourself softly.
Yeah, just a similar thing in that you're still launching a business if you're using things that are free or don't cost a lot. It's not like a measure of how great your business is going to be if you start with a free Wix website or you start selling on Etsy and design your own logo or don't have a logo, and it's not a measure of how great your business is going to be essentially. So just start with a free website. Yeah, make your own logo as well. Don't spend tons of money.
I have another actually. Well, I was just going to say, go to the right places, because I went to a craft fair and didn't sell anything and was really sad. And then people told me I was an idiot. And I went to a yarn show and no, not while I was there. Afterwards, when I was moping. Not when I was there. Afterwards, when I was very sad and telling everyone that I did awful and it was rubbish, I'm never doing another one again. And then loads of people, my colleagues, my peers, all went, yeah, you're an idiot. This is where you need to go, but it's going to cost you more money, but you're going to make a lot more money.
So are there any more? Oh, sorry, do you want to add something to that?
I've only got a quick thing, and I wanted to reinforce what was said at the opposite end, that the name is really cool. You have a name, that's how you're putting yourself out there. You will have unregistered trademark rights by using that. I have a lot of clients who do the full package and they get trademarks for their name, the word mark, the logo, and everything else. I'll tell you now that your logo, how you style yourself in the marketplace will change in the 5 years when you set up. It will change so many times. But if your name is how you're instantly identified, focus on that. Trial lots of different looks. Find the look that really appeals to your main core market, your demographic. But trust me, that won't be from the get-go. You will have to explore all of these fields. But thankfully, that side of things, you can make do with your own registered rights. And when you've got the traction, when you've got the funds, put some formal protection in place. But thankfully, on the branding side of things, you don't necessarily have to put all your money in the pot from the get-go.
Are there any more questions from, oh gosh, yes, lots of hands have gone up. So please, yes.
I'm just starting out, but I was wondering if you had any advice on pricing handmade items for our fairs.
So I know Laura has definitely got something to say about this.
I've got a lot to say about this.
The question is, if I could just repeat it for the online audience. The question is, advice about pricing your work.
Do not undervalue your work. I'm going to say it in my scary voice. It's so important. It's so important. Okay, if you're starting out and you're brand spanking new and you feel that your stuff maybe isn't where the price point of other people is, okay, maybe you'd be a little under, maybe. But really, if you don't believe in it, if you don't think it's amazing, why isn't it at the same price point? And anyone out there, and you're making something, creating something, and you're selling it for less than what is, when you look out there, market value, all you're doing is saying you're not worth as much. All you're doing is saying the rest of the people that are out there, I'm going to bring this market value down. And we all want to earn a living wage. I mean, it's lovely. It's lovely to make a difference in people's lives. It's lovely for me to be able to go and get my kids from school whenever I want. It's lovely to have that lifestyle. But if you can't pay the bills, then it's not going to work. And you need to, in my mind, you need to be at a level as well to be taken seriously. So for my show, I had a rule this year that was, if I could see that anyone who'd applied was under £15 for a 100 gram skein of yarn, which is very cheap. For hand-dyed yarn, you're looking at £18 to £24 normally for now. Now everyone's raising their prices for 100 grams. If you had it for less than 15 quid, I wouldn't let you in, because I cannot put in a show a stand where they're selling it for £22 and next to them someone who's selling it for 14. It's not fair on the marketplace, and it's just saying to everyone, this person isn't worth as much, so I don't do it. And next year that's going up, because I'm going to be a little bit more strict, and I'm going to tell everybody too.
We were at a show late last year, and there was one vendor who had a bargain sale on the Sunday. They just wanted to go home with an empty car, so they were selling everything at £2, and the whole room was almost we were ready to kill them.
Oh, another fight at a yarn fair.
But seriously, the thing is, all you're doing is saying that you're not as good. Well, if you believe in yourself enough to make this into a career, believe in yourself.
I think it's more basic, though. I think you come from a creative space, you know what it's cost you to produce something. You don't value your time because you're not actually taking account that you're putting time in. And I think in the early stages, you don't realise how much time you're putting in, but put a value on an hourly sort of input. Don't be too shocked when that comes out at a figure that you sort of raise your eyebrows at. Look at the people in your field, and you're probably going to find you're on a par with them. So if you feel that you're doing something better, put the price up.
And when it's handmade, if it's not, it's not the case of if it's cheaper, it's better. They might look at that on Amazon when they're looking at mass-produced things. That's not what people think when they look at handmade stuff. They don't think cheap is better.
There is someone at the back who's had their hand up for some time. Yes, go ahead.
Basically, I'm setting up my own website to sell my items on it, and for pricing, do I need to put in 20% VAT on it, but I'm not registered on that? Because I was thinking pricing of items plus the pricing for the shipping and included as a final price. Do I need to include the VAT, but I'm not registered for VAT?
To summarise that question, I know you've got another one. We're running out of time, so I'll go for that question first, if you don't mind. So this audience member is talking about setting up a website, putting items for sale on it. Does VAT need to be added? Who knows the answer
Only
to
if you're
that?
VAT registered. So if you're VAT registered, which you can be, but I wouldn't do it if you're not at the VAT threshold, which is a lot of money. Then you don't need to include it, and you don't need to, yeah.
Another question. I'm both an artist and a crochet toy maker and designer, and I'm developing a website. So I was thinking, can a website perform the double duty, or I need to have separate websites for each of my activities? What would be better?
So you're multi-skilled. You have a couple of different artistic themes that you explore, and so should there be two different websites for the two different types of things that are made, or is it okay to have things that are slightly different all on one website?
I think if you're just starting out, one website should be fine because that will reduce your costs. But what I would do is make sure that they're separated by web page. So you've got a drop-down menu and you keep the categories different, because it might be that the different disciplines or the different things you create will attract different audiences.
Yeah, my website, I was planning to put each my separate thing into each separate folder, web page.
Yeah.
You get it.
Yeah, so yeah, I think just having a different web page for each type of thing and just making sure the information on each web page is what the audience might need. So you might need to put a bit more detail for your design work, for example, that's slightly different to your other work.
Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you. Are there any? We are going to run out of time fairly shortly. Are there any other audience members? Yes, go ahead.
I'm an artist and I've recently moved to the area, so I have no contacts with anybody. We've lived abroad. Is there anybody locally that one could go to for advice on actually getting the work out there?
So you're a new arrival to Norwich, welcome, and you've lived abroad, you're an artist and you want some advice on where to go to find out how you can network.
Yes.
Suggestions?
Yeah, I would say the Norfolk Arts Forum is a really good place to start. So that's part of Norfolk County Council. You should be able to find them. I think it's called the Arts Development Service on the Norfolk County Council website, and there will be a email address. I used to work for them, but unfortunately I can't remember it. And also Marion, who runs Art in Norwich, which is this free booklet she puts out, I think, every other month. She will have really excellent contacts. So if you Google search Art in Norwich, and you can put Marion in the Google search as well, you should be able to find her contact details. But I think Norfolk Arts Forum is a really excellent place to start.
I'll also suggest the forum, actually, while we're at it, and plug the forum. As well as the free events that we organise here, we also hire out our space to a lot of different art groups in the locality as well. So just looking on our website and seeing who is coming here with their exhibitions will give you a good, some of the people that you might want to speak to. So
Can I just add to that? Because
yes.
I think, because I've seen it from the other side, I've taken a number of classes, pottery and that sort of thing. And it might be the entity that you're talking about, because there was a big site, it did all the art classes. But when you talk to the instructors, they're fully aware of what's going on, what to avoid, what's quite good. So it might be a simple case of just ringing round something that is in your area from that sort of thing. But again, search for the relevant courses that are being offered locally, and you might find that you get quite a good response from that.
Rachel, you had something to add to this topic.
Just quickly, less informally, I run a free mental health type group called Small Biz Mates. We're on Instagram and we've got a Facebook group, and it's just a small group of us, and we meet about once a month and we walk around local parks in Norwich. You don't have to have a business, it's just meeting up with local creatives to have a walk and an informal chat and to meet people. So it's not, sometimes in the winter months there's I'm on it every month, sometimes there's 3 of us, sometimes there's 12 of us, but it's sort of different people usually each month, and it's great for meeting people and fellow artists. I could hopefully tell you about good spots. So yeah, it's on Instagram. It's worth coming along to. It's like free, and it's just all about meeting people and getting some fresh air when you're stuck in your studio all the time. But it's small biz mates.
When we said welcome to Norwich, we really meant it. Now, I am going to wrap up the general discussion now, and oh, sorry, beg your pardon.
I was wondering if I could just get in with a quick question. Any of the panel, do you take a salary, as it were, if you're going from a full-time job to self-employed? Have you got to the point where you can take the profit as a salary, or do you just take the money when it's good, and then there'll be some shorter months and that sort of thing?
So, summarise for the online audience, does the panel take a salary, same amount each month perhaps, or do you pick and choose when you take money out of what you're doing?
Yeah, I have two businesses. So with my handout business, that's my sole trader business. That I take money when I got money. My limited company, which is East Anglia Yarn Festival, this year it will pay me a salary. Yeah.
This looks like.
For me, I have the Wayward Adventurers Guild that doesn't actually pay me very much at all at the moment. But I'm also a freelance arts marketer, and that is more of a salary. So I can say that that's how much I'm going to get a month. The guild will grow, hopefully, but sometimes it's a case of some bits will give you what it kind of feels like a salary, and other bits are kind of a bit more, as and when, really.
Thank you. Yes, final question.
Oh, so I do, funnily enough, I do social media for arts organisations and content creation. So I write blog posts. I do a lot for arts organisations in Dorset and London. So it's a lot of content creation as well as kind of strategic campaigns to get people to go to events or to fundraise for something specific.
I just thought of one thing for you in particular. Isn't there an open studio on a regular basis?
Yes,
which
that's
you
right.
must get into?
Yes. So I am going to wrap up the discussion there. It has been absolutely fascinating. So much content, so much advice, so many stories. It really has been possibly even the best we've done so far. Absolutely marvellous. I think, did you want to talk a bit further about the BIPC, Julie? Was that what you wanted to do?
Also to say thank you to all the panellists. It's been really rich, actually, the content of this evening and the information that you've given us and shared, and the honesty as well. So thank you, plus the added bonus of protecting your creativity, which I'm really pleased that we could introduce this evening. We have, as the BIPC, I have got colleagues from London here at the top there. We've got Anna and Rosie. And one thing I wanted to say, apart from we need to evidence our work. So again, if you got a chance to take the QR code and give us a little bit of feedback about this evening, because we all like to have feedback and ways of improving and so forth. We've got paper copies of the feedback form outside as well. As for the BIPC, if you want to know a little bit more about what we do, because all the different subjects that we've covered, whether it's intellectual property, we've talked about funding tons, networking, well-being, what we offer as a BIPC is workshops and some inspirational and practical. So price points, we do work with partners so that we're able to offer workshops on these very issues that we're all discussing. So please do give us a look and pick up our leaflet. Funding, we have lots of business databases at our BIPCs, including here at the Millennium Library, where you can look at something called Grant Finder as an example, see what the niche funding is that's available, whether it's for your business, whether it's creative or another type of industry. Also, at the moment, please do pick up the leaflet, which is Scaling Up, Grow With Us. So this is specifically, very hard to say after a long day, specifically funding aimed at those in the creative industries. There is quite a high threshold in order to well, you can apply, but if you actually fulfil the criteria, but along with if you're successful, mentoring, have a quick look at the back. So there's mentoring, one-to-one support, and lots of benefits if you are successful with the application. But rather than let me tell you, just pick up a leaflet or talk with Anna and Rosie. Yeah.
Oh, yes, there's the people to talk to after. Can we give the online audience a quick glimpse of the QR code for the survey as well, possibly, if that's okay with your cameras? Thank you very much, yes. So it just remains for me to say a big thank you. Before I do thank the panel, I also thank Mary for being our BSL interpreter this evening. Thank you very much. And I'd like to say a big thank you to our panel for sharing your thoughts, your expertise, your stories, and your embarrassing moments. I think we've all found that very, very helpful. There are people for those of you who are in person to chat to after the event. But it just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining us here at the Forum, at the Norfolk Makers Festival, which I have to say continues until the end of Sunday. And the content of Free Things to Do changes every day. So don't think you've seen it if you've been once. And also we have exhibitions at St. Peter Mancroft Church opposite the Forum. The Grenfell Tower Memorial Quilts, really, really worth seeing. And also the Dementia Darnings at Norwich Cathedral. Again, both of those on till the end of the month. So please don't miss those. So a round of applause for our panel and for yourselves and for those at home. Thank you so much for joining me.